Hello, everybody. Welcome on the Lights on Data show. Today, we're going to see how we can blossom that data strategy. Now, what does it
Ooh.
really mean to have a successful data strategy? But of course, we're not going to be the one telling you how to do that. But we have our amazing guest today, Dora.
And I have the pleasure of introducing Dora. She is a business technologist with deep domain expertise in information management and enterprise architecture digital transformation. She is accustomed to walking the line between business and IT, comfortable with driving change at global organizations. Throughout her career, colleagues have described Dora as a strategic thought leader with exceptional people skills and a strong work ethic that gets the job done right. And you will see that in our show today for sure. Dora brings high energy and passion to her work. Currently, and throughout her 25 plus year career, she has had the opportunity to be in leadership roles of enterprise wide reach, allowing her to make an impact at global organizations in the financial services, insurance, medical technology, and retail industry. Welcome, Dora.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning. It's great to see you both, Diana and George. Thank you for having me on.
It's great to have you here, and thank you for bringing spring with wonderful colors to our show. Before we start and we go into the topic, tell us a little bit about yourself, about hobbies, what you do in your spare time, or what you enjoy doing.
Yes. So obviously our lives are very busy, lots of time working
Mm.
on work stuff, but definitely trying to take time. It's very important for me to spend as much time with my family as possible. So every opportunity I get, I love cooking, having people over, friends and family, and
Mm.
I typically cook a lot and just have a good time. Other than that, just I try to stay active, maybe working out, just listening to music, do some gardening. I'm looking forward to start doing some gardening soon. Looking forward to grow some of my own peppers and tomatoes that I
Oh,
love so
nice.
much.
Wow.
So keeping me
Hot,
busy.
hot peppers or bell peppers?
Oh, see, if it's my son, he loves hot peppers. He actually
Mhm.
brought me last year. He tried to grow hot, spicy peppers in his dorm. He's in college, and then he brought it to me, and I grew it. We had a crop. We had several hot
Wow.
peppers, and it was very spicy. But no, for me, I like sweet peppers.
Very
Mhm.
nice.
It's a beautiful sensation to grow and eat what you've grown. Just go out in the garden, pick something, put it on a plate, and eat it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I
Yeah.
haven't done that in a while, to be honest. But recently, I did buy one of those garden boxes. I put it together, so it's just. Hopefully tomorrow I'll get some time to just fill it up with some dirt and just get it ready. Put some seeds
Fingers
in there.
crossed.
Yes.
Yes.
So on to another hot topic, data strategies. So Dora, first I'm curious, do you think every organization should have a data strategy in place?
Absolutely. Data, it's at the core pretty much of everything we do. For me, data is like the lifeblood of
Mhm.
business. And, you know, so to answer your question, yes. And if I can just add on to that a little bit, I would say it's important to also realize that data strategy, it's not really just about the data, but it is about our business and how we can move our business forward. For me, a data strategy that just talks about the bits and the bytes of the data, how we transfer it, is got opportunity to get better. It's how do we relate it to what are our business drivers, and how do we focus and drive specific goals that we want to. So it's really about our business. It's about how we get better understanding of who we're working with, our customers, our suppliers, our
Mhm.
internal stakeholders. And so to me, data strategy is about how do we better manage our business data
Mhm.
to lead us to those business outcomes and make a real impact uh, for how we run our business, and then how we help our customers, patients, depending what industry we're in.
That's yeah, a great point, Dora. And
Thank you.
then I wonder, would the business strategy come first and then the data strategy, or should they be done at the same time? Or is it, once whoever creates the data strategy, and I'll ask you about that too, but do they need to sit at the table of the business strategy meeting and setting that up?
Yeah, so I think typically folks think in an organization about business strategy first. I think the opportunity there is to make sure that when we do think about our data strategy, that yes, it's very well interconnected, and understanding again that it's about the business, right? So, I would say typically people think of business strategy first, or maybe that comes first, but you cannot really have a successful data strategy without very thoughtfully and meaningfully connecting it to the business goals. And being at the table, I think it's critical. It doesn't always happen. And I think we all know, right, different challenges about how do we, it's a complex thing too. It's a very complex area for people to understand what it is, how we do it. There's so much to know in the space of data and analytics, and how we do it, and then how we articulate the data strategy in simple terms that resonate with our business leaders, our finance leaders as well, because obviously all of that takes some investment. So it's a tough, thing to articulate, but absolutely, I think being at the table makes a difference. And at a time or another, I've come across articles. I don't remember figures off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure there've been studies out there that say, hey, when you have someone, let's say the role of a CDO at the table, it actually organizations that do, organizations that don't, and it may be called the CDO or different roles, right? But having that voice at the table there makes a difference to the bottom and top lines of the organization.
Absolutely. Especially for those that are aiming to be data driven, and hopefully all of them are.
Exactly.
And then what about the table for the data strategy? So besides the CDO, who do you think should be part of that discussion?
So CDO, I think, as in Chief Data Officer, right? And there's different names for it. I don't think we have a standard definition for what a CDO is, but whatever they're called, CDOs, Chief Data Officers, Chief Data Digital Officers, Chief, or even if they're not chief, VPs of data and analytics, senior directors of data and analytics, depending on the industry, depending on the size of the organization. At the end of the day, it takes a lot of people to really, I think it takes a very clear strategy, clear vision and mission and goals, but also very clear operating model and a very focused execution of how we go about it. That means that different folks from the organization have to contribute to this. So you need that ownership and accountability that says, hey, here's the vision, here's the mission, making it very relatable, and getting the backing from the executives with the rest of the executive business leadership. You need that role, but it's not just one person or even just one team maybe that reports under this person. So hopefully that answers your question, George. I think it takes a lot of people, but there's got to be that clarity in roles, responsibilities, and who does what, and having the right people in the right roles.
And what about the timeline? Does it take months to put that together, or is it that one afternoon from your experience?
Oh, it takes about 2 hours. No. No, I know it's a fallacy, right? I mean, this is a journey. This is a very complex area. And typically, when we're talking about managing our data, putting a data strategy around data and analytics around it, I don't consider this being a project. It's a program. It's really an ongoing organizational capability that needs to be managed, again, very intentionally, very meaningfully and thoughtfully. So I don't see really moving the needle, truly becoming data-driven, data-informed. Obviously, there is a start, I would say, right? Especially to get in a well, thoughtful, organized way, but it keeps going on. Our organizations, in my experience, and speaking with colleagues across the different industries, right? There is data mess out there. There is just so much opportunity for us to manage our data and, again, connect it to really make a real business impact. So there might be a start, but I think it's an ongoing journey. The key there, I think, is to make sure that we don't try to boil the ocean, and we are very focused as to and stay diligent against priorities. And those priorities, again, being very clearly connected to, from a business strategy perspective, what it is that we want to hit first or second. and relating the data focus priorities to those business priorities as well.
So, Dora, where do you start with a data strategy, and what are the key pillars of it?
Where do you start? What are the key pillars? I think so. A lot of what I'm seeing is that, especially recent years, there's a lot of focus starting. Typically, people are talking about data and analytics and looking at maybe just advanced analytics, maybe analytics platforms, and with AI having so much hype these days, right? Talking about, okay, I'm going to bring AI, ML, do data science, and that's my data strategy. In my mind, that's definitely right. Thinking about our analytics, that's definitely, I think, a key pillar, right? But I think something that oftentimes we forget or we don't organize ourselves as well as we should, in my view, is the whole data management part of it. In other words, analytics, garbage in, garbage out, right? So I think there needs to be a pillar, there needs to be focus around how do we make sure that we have data that it's well managed, that it's governed, that the quality is good, especially when it comes to those data attributes, be it analytical KPIs, be it master data like customer, supplier, material, that just has that impact across, right, the functions and across the business processes. So I think if loosely calling that data management, because even the term data management means different things to different people,
right?
But that would include things like governance and quality and data information architecture and MDM, right? So I would think that's a key pillar. Obviously, and then obviously looking at analytics and bringing in the right enabling technology to do advanced analytics, right? And monetize as much of our data. But again, we're going to do a better job monetizing our data when we stop being reactive, try to fix it all the time. Not stop, but as we're doing that, also focus on making sure that we are getting the data that has that global impact, like master data and KPIs, ready really to inform these advanced analytics. I think we ought to not forget, really, as part of this, all of the data privacy, security, information governance aspects of it, right? So all of the data privacy regulations, how we protect our data, but even in an overarching data strategy, I think even things like, what do we retain? What do we archive? How do we protect, right? How do we make sure that we're very thoughtful about the data that we really do need to help us with our goals? So I would say that's just another pillar. Obviously, platforms, enabling platforms, right? Fill tools, the technology. And for me, the key there, it's more about how that really fits with the rest of the ecosystem, right? Because not one key data platform even is a lone island, so to speak. So I'm always looking at these things from an end-to-end perspective. Lastly, I would say for a successful data strategy, we need to pay attention to data literacy, meaning all along, this being a journey, there's different understanding across the organization, all the different layers. So at the different layers from the very top all the way to the people that are hands-on doing whatever they're doing with the data. What it is, why we're doing it, who's going to do what, when, the why, the why, the what, the when, the how, right? I think all of that can be addressed at a data literacy umbrella, because that's important to keep the momentum, to get the people engaged, right? Like I was saying, I think earlier, it's not one person or one team even for data strategy to be successfully implemented. When it comes to implementation, having the clarity of who does what and how we do it, but also keeping folks engaged and being part of it, I think it's important. So if I were to summarize that whole data management side of things with quality and governance and MDM and information architecture, there's the analytics, advanced analytics part of it. There's the privacy, security, side of things. Obviously, the right
Tools and platforms.
tools, platforms, and looking at that in an end-to-end perspective. I got a lot of enterprise architecture in my background, so that's something that I always see. We forget what happens downstream to what we're building. So really understanding, is that right, and how does it fit with what else we have? And then data literacy, I would say those are kind of like your key, I think it's 5 key pillars, which is why it's so complex, right? There's a lot there, which is also why it is so important to be very focused and prioritizing as to what we're going to tackle first, second, or pieces of every pillar in a thoughtful, prioritized way.
So, Dora, I read one of your interviews and you were mentioning people and culture as the things that are the hardest maybe to change and to address. Do you have any suggestions there? Or I don't even know, maybe stories or something that people can take back to their organizations and use when it comes to changing the culture towards a more data-driven one?
Yeah, you must be referring to the chat I had with Marisa with the human element in data management. So, and I tend to think of this maybe under the data literacy umbrella. It's the whole think about organizational change management. So I'm sure it comes no surprise to you guys, right? There is status quo. There is the way we've always been doing things. And a lot of the things around the successful implementation of a data strategy has to do with, hey, think about data, not only what you're doing, but how it fits and the impact that it has downstream, and how do we work together. These are different habits that it changes what people do day to day, how they manage, how they treat that data. It changes the mindset. It's a shift to the mindset. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do. So we're talking about, goals. We're talking about process. We're talking about tools. The people aspect, in my mind, to be really effective and successful with this, it's probably the most critical one. Because, and I had said that in my chat with Marissa too, no matter how great technology and processes and everything we implement, who uses it, who's going to leverage it, even if it's not someone that implements, it's people, right? And that's why getting everybody engaged and understanding what's in it for them, right? And that's some of the tips really to make it very relatable to whom you're talking about. If we're saying, okay, we're going to embark on this journey, it is a journey. Why should people change doing what they're doing, right? And so making it very relatable, understanding where they're coming from their business team, their business function, whatever it is that they're working on, using those examples. I think that's one of the things that I've seen help making progress. But it's a huge undertaking. And I think it's one of the areas that it gets very much underestimated. So yeah, and you got aspects there about a culture of working together, collaboratively, being inclusive, being transparent, being clear, having clear roles of who does what, how we work together, and just really getting people engaged and understanding what's in it for them. Why should they be part of the journey?
Absolutely. We have a couple of questions here that I want to take. First, I want to mention that Laura and saying those are great components of the data strategy. So thank you again for sharing that with us. So first question here from Leonolo. I hope I pronounced that right. But he's asking is it advisable to start off from a data strategy point of view, or maybe work on fixing the organizational culture in data literacy, or do we take on those in parallel and let one inform the other?
I would say the latter. I would say we don't have the luxury of, if we just fix everything, but we don't put effort into communicating and getting all of the right stakeholders to back up what it is that we're doing, that because it's going to need initial support, we're only going to go so far. If we start talking about it, then we're going to end up being just theoretical and talking about it. I think the latter, these need to happen in parallel. Need to define it, start executing, and start showing the wins while we're setting up the better, more solid foundation to help us, to enable us to go faster, to be able to be, to be able to be like, when I'm thinking about data strategy as a mission or a vision for a data strategy, I think it's how do we help our organization and our partners, internal and external, and externally, depending the case, right, to get to really trusted data exactly when they need it, right? So they can get to it easily when they need it. Think of all the times we're looking for data and we're looking for it like a week later, finally found. But how do we get to the data easily? How do we make sure that it's trusted, reliable data? And how do we do that in an agile and scalable way? There's so much dynamics going on in our business environment these days. So being able to flex to scale, right? Say there's an M&A, you're bringing in additional capabilities or additional systems and processes that are overlapping with existing capabilities somehow, right? How do we incorporate all of that? There's lots of dynamics there. So I would say it needs to happen in parallel.
That's thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
As we have here, excellent practical point. So thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. A lot of comments are coming in on what you just said. And Will here on LinkedIn is wondering, have you assessed readiness for collaboration, change literacy, onboarding, acceptance of data and information as an asset, and etc.? How have you assessed all of these readiness points? Do you maybe do a survey, or do you have those individual conversations? Oh, and Dora froze here for a second, so we're hoping she'll be back. Sorry
Maybe
about
we
that.
can put up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we
she's
can.
back.
Okay, great. I could hear you, but for some reason it looked like we froze there for a second.
It's all
Okay,
right.
how do you assess readiness? Definitely, service help, ongoing effort talking with different stakeholders help. But I think, you know, and this I think applies not just to data and successful implementing data, but pretty much anything else I want to do in the organization. It has to do with the culture of the organization, right? Are people open to accept change, because there's a lot of change involved in this, which means that what I was used to doing, and I've been doing it for the past 5, 10, 20 years, whatever, it's always been done like that, right? It has to do with change in the culture. So I think we can do it internally. Survey will help the readiness, but many times I've seen organizations actually bring in experts, like consulting firms, experts that assess. And yes, it starts with surveys, it starts with stakeholder interviews, synthesize the results, but then there's an action plan to follow. And this is, again, not something that happens overnight. This is one meeting or 2 meetings that happens overnight. I think there needs to be a very thoughtful way how we go about it, and that we track it and we measure it to make sure that we are hitting the marks and we are making that progress towards a culture where people are more open, how they work with each other, open to the new ideas, but also how we implement them. And again, for me, what I've seen work better is the culture of transparency and collaboration and listening and working with each other and respecting each other's views and putting our heads together to get to a better outcome. And I think that's something that probably all organizations these days are looking at, working with. Some of them have taken more seriously, others not so much. But I think it's critical to the implementation of a successful implementation of data strategy. But also, I think having that type of culture really helps with, other efforts in the organization as well.
Absolutely. So, thank you. Makes sense.
Great.
Thank you. Very helpful. And we have a follow-up question here from David. And this is something that I think a lot of us have a challenge with this. He's wondering, how do you sell that to execs who just want a new super duper integrated dashboard?
I know it's not an easy thing, right? It's very tough. And I think it's really putting it in business terms, because if you look at your data and you say, okay, we'll give you the dashboard, right? But let's find those examples from our own organizations where, let's say, how much time and how much does it cost us spending on fixing the data over and over, right? If I fix the data every time I do a dashboard versus actually fixing it on the right spot in the flow, not right before on the dashboard, but as early on, close to the source where the data anomalies might happen, right? The more hops you go to, the more expensive it is. Or you can use examples like, hey, we're not having the right checks there, for example, to capture, say, shipping addresses for our customers at the point where we capture their information, right? How much is that costing us? How much time are we spending, for example, to go curate that information? Is that delaying us shipping product to customers? So find, in the different areas, it's just a couple of examples, but make it communicated in business terms. Use examples like this. You can translate, you can make some assumptions what it would cost, but translate it into time and effort and dollars. Use the right examples and use those to communicate. It's not about speaking, we know, and it's not about speaking theoretically why this is good, right? Because if it doesn't relate in real business terms, it's going to be a very hard time to get that executive support and that executive backing. Executive support, it's really one of those critical success factors in my experience, not only for the program to be established as a really key initiative, a program that has the backing, but to also keep on going, having the support, because that has trickle down effects. You know what that means. Hopefully that helps.
Very much. And I think one of the reasons why you are so successful at what you do is that you understand both the technical part and IT and business as well, and you bring them together. So you speak both languages. And to that point, I wanted to ask you, for people who are maybe just starting, or for people who struggle with this, what do you have? How can IT people understand a little bit better business? What is it that that would help them? Is it more dialogue? Or what would you suggest?
I think, well, there's a couple of things, right? First of all, I think making a real effort, right, to understand the business context. I always talk about, when I'm talking about data, first and foremost, need to understand the business context. What is this? How are we using it? In what business process? For what purpose? That helps with other things as well, making sure that we're focusing on, that critical data that we need, because we also have the tendency sometimes to just bring all of the data over, right? But to answer your question specifically, Diana, I think where it helps a lot is really to set up the environment where IT and business teams work together. I'm a huge advocate for business and IT working together. We're one team, right? So let's say typically when we're working around a specific goal. Typically, those are projects or initiatives, however they're getting defined as the organization. Where I've seen the most success is where you have the right stakeholders, but it's not like, and that happens a lot with the data science teams too. It's not like, okay, you go off to the side and you do data science. You go off to the side and you do data engineering. We really need to understand the business value, the business context, how we're using it, what it means, what is it impacting the business? Why is it this data that we should use and not something else, right? Is this really helping us with what we're trying to drive on the business? That happens a lot more organically and naturally when teams are structured in a way that business SMEs and technical SMEs work together and listen and be respectful of each other, right? Technical folks can learn from the business folks can learn from the technical folks, because I know we're talking about technical folks and we're thinking technical skill sets, but it is more common than not that your technical folks actually know sometimes more about the data itself. But it's being very intentional about taking a step further now and being able to try to communicate it as clearly and as fast as possible in that business context, saying, what is it and what is it going to impact, what's in it for the person you're talking to. But more than anything else, I think just cross-pollinating, if you will, putting these teams with both business and technical SMEs together to work on a common, well-defined goal with very clear roles and responsibilities, right? And again, always with that culture underneath of working collaboratively, transparently. We're here together to solve the problem or create an enabling new capability for the company. I think that's probably one of the things that I've seen make the biggest impact to progress from that perspective.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you. And Masa is making note here on the flexible team that he mentioned, and Rebecca's mentioning that it's really helpful. So thank you so much for that. Bharat is wondering, what's your data strategy perspective on organizations curating their own data feeds and data products?
Let me make sure that I understand the question. Curating their own data feeds and data products as opposed to what? Hiring a third-party organization to do it, I guess?
Yeah, that's my assumption. So, I
Okay.
mean, banks, for example, they prefer, well, not all, but some, they prefer to externalize the service. They're saying, hey, we're not in the business of managing our data. Let's just pay other companies to do it for us.
So keeping in mind that in my experience and in my view, it is extremely important. Again, data strategy is about the business, it's not about the data itself, which means we need to be very clear about, again, that business context. In my mind, no one knows how we're running our business, what we need, what should we use, right? As well as the people internally. So for me, totally 100%, giving it to a third party, it's a little bit risky. At the very least, yes, you can get help, right? And you can get specific skills to help out. But I think the accountability falls within the organization. And I think, again, having that business specific, your own business's subject matter expertise, and the technical different systems and everything, what's happening internally, and sure, you can get help, but in my view, it's dangerous to say, okay, 100%, somebody externally will do it. Where I've seen, not specifically with data, but with other things as well, and accountability here is very important. You need the expertise, the subject matter expertise for how it relates to my business and what I want to do in my business. These are not theoretical things that we can just do out there, right? It needs to be very tangible for what we're trying to move in the business. It's questionable in my mind that I can just give it to someone externally and thinking that, okay, it will magically happen.
That's a very good point.
It takes a lot of hard work, and it takes really being very thoughtful, very intentional, and very clear about what we're trying to solve for our business. This is not about doing data engineering and writing pipelines, right? That's important, but we got to start with, again, I sound like a broken record, and I think it's the way how old I am, because there's not even broken records anymore. But I sound like a broken record for the people that get it, saying that technology is important. You got people, process, and technology. I think people, culture, how we work together, right? Listening, respecting, that's important, right? Process, how we're doing it. Yes, the technology, but also always overlaying that it's that business strategy and the business goals. And are we focusing on the right thing to help us progress towards those goals?
I think repeating is very important when it comes to learning and changing. So I advocate for saying things over and over again in different ways and with different avenues and means, because that's how things will stick. Saying it once will never be enough, especially when it comes to change.
I couldn't agree with you more, Diane. And I think actually one of the things that it's a critical success factor, I think, for the successful implementation of a data strategy is having the right people in the right roles, right? So when you need really technical people doing the data engineering, great. You need that right skill set. When you're talking about, okay, how do I get my executives back this up and make this an initiative that has, lifeblood behind it, that has got the support, right? You got to also have the right person, the right skill that can articulate those things. And what I'm trying to say is that it takes resiliency, because the status quo is there. So one of the critical success factors, what I was trying to say, is that expecting that pushback and being resilient, you have to say the same thing, different ways depending on your audience, but even to the same person, the same stakeholder group, again and again maybe slightly different, like you said, making it very relatable to them. What I've seen, I've been in this space and driving this type of transformations for probably over 15 years now. I've been in IT for 27 years, but driving like large scale transformations for over 15 years.
It's a lot of experience.
Yeah. So what I've come across, what I've realized, this was a lesson learned for me many years ago, is that sometimes you come across people that get it. Conceptually, they get it and they say yes, yes. And then there comes the time to change the habits. This means that we have to do things hands-on a little bit differently. Your processes might need to change a little bit. You need to work and coordinate and orchestrate with these other things. Well, these people that were all behind it, all of a sudden it becomes not me, somebody else, and find the way of doing it. So the pushback is there, right?
Yeah.
You could have people that absolutely are against it, people that are all for it, but even the people that are all for it or the people that are in between, it takes that resilience from the person that's driving this to keep on reinforcing the what's in it for you and why you should stay engaged in this journey of implementing a well thought out data business data strategy.
And Dora, talking about that status quo, Morris here is wondering, hold on, what if that status quo is you have your top business executive levels, they have a very low data literacy. How do you then implement a data strategy when you probably don't have then that support from the top down?
Which is why having that support, it's critical success factor. Because if you do it the other way, bottoms up, you can only go so far. We've seen it many times, right, guys? We're going bottoms up. There's some momentum. You got a couple of people, but then you don't get the backing. You don't get people. It's like nice to do. It's not a measurable, incentivized goal for people that we need to be working, right? You don't get the support and the funding to keep on going. So doing it, getting that executive backing, it's important. Data literacy, again, you need to educate, you need to, in business value terms, that's how we're going to get the support, making it very, you're speaking to a finance person, go back with some of the examples that we're saying, or better examples, but that translate to here's the business value, right? You're talking to a marketing person, again, they're going to want to hear how it resonates with them. So I would say you do it, and these things are happening in parallel. Data literacy and educating, it's important to get that backing to begin with, to make sure that there is that support for this to keep on going and it doesn't falter because it's only bottoms up, right? It also helps with trickles down to all the way down to the folks that are hands-on doing data activities. They have those goals and their managers are backing them up and the managers are backing it up, because all the way from the top, they're backing it up, right? And there's different operating models and different ways how to do all of that. But it's important to get that. So data literacy and how you communicate about these things might be different to the executives versus to the folks who might be doing data stewardship activities versus to the folks that don't do any of this, but they're part of the operating model, right? And they're there to help and support you. So hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, you keep doing it, you keep communicating specific to the audience, you don't stop.
Yeah. No, this is great, Dora. Thank you. There's so many questions coming in.
I love the questions. I thank you to the audience here. I love the engagement and all the questions. Thank you, everyone.
I know we're a little bit over time too, so I don't want to keep you here for too much longer. But Kate has a great question here. If you can share your favorite success story in implementing a data strategy.
My favorite success story is when we did have the executive buy-in, when we had actual executives from all different regions and functions backing it up, and having the credibility, and then really start showing, right? One thing I think to understand is, and that's one of the hardest things, by the way, that I've, in my experience with executives, even after you get the support and having the credibility, by the way, when your executives trust that you know what you're talking about and you can, you're a good leader and you can do that, you can mobilize teams and operationally also can stay focused and diligent and start showing results, right? that's good. But one of the challenges, and sorry, Kate, I know I'm derailing a little bit, but coming up, it's important here. One of the challenges too is how you get the executives, even after you get the support, to understand that these things take time. This is not trivial effort, because they would expect, okay, it's been 6 months. Did you send me $1 million yet? Right? And there's a lot of foundation to set up to begin with. So I'd say having the backing and having the credibility, and then little wins, Kate, right? Maybe perhaps how to organize ourselves towards, hey, getting the investment to bring in perhaps the right fit technology to help us, where people is easier to go find the data that they need, and they know who to talk to. I've heard of cases where somebody wanted to learn something about a particular, say, global data attribute, and 15 emails later that got to the same person. So if I can actually get the backing in and getting the right tool and put the right processes and the people, the roles, because again, it's never just the technology. That's just a tool, part of the whole recipe here. It's all of the ingredients. So even if I can get that and establish it and start building onto it, to me, that's a little win, right? Getting specific KPIs, for example, even if we can backtrack on those particular critical data elements that are informing the particular KPI, and getting that better trusted data and delivering that dashboard, while we're doing all these other things, that's great. And I think that keeps on reinforcing the credibility and the support being ongoing.
I love this session.
Me too.
I think this is Will, and he's mentioning that the answers and tips were truly practical and helpful. So thank you so much, Dora.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the opportunity to chat. As you guys can probably tell, I'm very passionate about this space. So, and I love the engagement and hearing back what's in people's minds through the questions that are coming through, and learning from each other. Right? We're all here to learn from each other and do better together.
Definitely love the community and the support, and we appreciate
very grateful
it.
for it. Yes.
Since Yana's mentioning, great session, guys, as always. Jewelry is very cool topic. It's both hot and cool. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Thank you. Everybody's really thinking here. So thank you so much, everyone, for all your questions and engagement. And I know there's a few other questions, but I'm hoping maybe I can send some of these to Dora. Maybe we could have her back again at a later time.
That would be lovely.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I'm really very grateful for the opportunity to chat about this hot and cold topic at the same time, George and Diana. This is very relevant, I think, and it touches all of our organizations and all of us in this greater data management community, data and analytics community.
It does. It's still a challenge that we have, but with thought leaders and people like you, I think we can get there.
Yes, for sure. I find this one of how I would describe the session, besides very lively and interesting and insightful, also very hopeful. It's like hearing you talk. It's like, okay, there are ways to do it and to be successful at this, and to really make this work and have a successful data strategy. So thank you very, very much for that. And again, thank you everyone for being here, for the questions, for the support. And I wish everyone a very, very happy weekend, a very nice weekend. Dora, I hope that you'll be able to do the gardening that you're looking forward to. And may you have wonderful crops. What can I say?
Yes. So if I do end up coming back, I'll tell you how
it went.
Yes. How that went. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and share some of my thinking. And again, thanks for the engagement from everyone that's on the show here.
Thank you, Dora, and everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.